Well, we are live on this end, and we're waiting for the intro to start on the other end, and then we will get rolling.
Well, you know what? It didn't pull up, Brother Wyatt.
All right.
Just go ahead and start.
Well, yeah. Praise the Lord. That's okay. If you start off a little rocky, then you set the bar low moving forward. You can only improve. So no problem there. With all the technology that's going on, it's amazing we're making this work at all. But greetings in Jesus. Welcome to everybody to the very first official Highways and Byways Live. I see some folks are already popping on. Thank you, Steve Codill, telling me to keep sharing the word. I love it. And John Noel and Scott, welcome to all of you. I know Bruce is somewhere out there. Whether he's on the voice line tonight or not, I don't know. But we want to say welcome to everybody. This very first Highways and Byways live video cast. I am absolutely delighted that you've joined us. Want to put out there and just remind you that the text number is 570-220-2536. If you want to send a text message in, we have a dedicated number for that, 570-220-2536. You can always email at highwaymag101@gmail.com. And a lot of folks have figured out how to go ahead and just type right in on the Facebook, and I can see their comments there as well. And then we have ourselves on the Lord's Roundtable voicemail, conference line tonight. So we're going out a number of different places. Welcome to everybody on the conference line as well. We did do a test run. Actually, we were ahead of schedule. We got ahead of everything on our little checklist as we were getting ready for Monday night, and we decided to run a test this past Friday night. A lot of people logged in, and they stayed with us. We went a long time there. I think we went almost 2 hours, and we're really shooting to keep things down to an hour tonight. If it runs past that, it's not going to run past you very much because we all have things to do, and we don't want to expect people to stay in front of the screen forever. Steve Richardson's with us. He's helping me. I'm a co-host here with Highways and Byways Live, at least until we get things rolling and we can set him free. Steve, they say if you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person, and that's why I asked you to give me a hand and kind of co-host as we got launched here. Thank you so much for you coming along and helping us get started here.
Well, I'm privileged to be here, Wyatt, and I wasn't busy until I ran into you. No.
Well, that could happen.
But no.
Yeah. We appreciate you. We appreciate you stretching yourself. And again, the other night, I was really surprised at the interest that there was there, just at an unannounced live video cast. Maybe it was curiosity. I don't know. Lots of folks are joining in now. Hi to you all. Appreciate it. So, We've actually received a couple of texts through the Facebook dedicated number and, again, online, so that's excellent. We want those things to kind of drive where we're going, very much like the Highways and Byways audio magazines have been over the last 14 years. We want folks to kind of help decide which direction things are going to go. Much more interesting if it's something that's interesting to you than having me tell you what's interesting. And we have a lot of ways that we could go tonight. And I have a few things on the list. We get a question, maybe a Bible question, a spiritually related question, a topical suggestion, or just a thought or something that somebody has. If you're on the conference line, you're just going to have to speak up when I take a breath somewhere along the way and say I have something I'd like to share or interject, and that's fine. That we want everybody to contribute. That's how we're going to be driven here. One of the first things that I had on this end of things to talk about a little bit was we've all seen the different posts that have been up there with regard to Dr. Graham passing away, Billy Graham passing away. It doesn't take but a few days for news like that to just kind of fade away, and there's so much more going on that news just sort of kind of disappears, kind of like a Facebook post or a Facebook video. It's it's gone pretty quick, and it just moves right down the food chain. So you need to stay relevant, and I don't want to lose sight of something because it's going to take us into actually one of the major topics for this evening, I think. But with regard to Billy Graham, years ago, actually all the way back to all the way back to 1983. I remember that Billy Graham, of course, his ministry had been flowing for many, many years already. And he always stayed away from anything doctrinal for the best part. He always stayed away from anything controversial, always focused on the essentials. Christ, him crucified, raised from the dead, and able to save. And that was essentially Billy Graham's message. So when he came out with a book in 1983, I believe it was released, as I said, and it was called The Approaching Hoofbeats. And it turned out that it was a book that Billy Graham had put out with regard to some of the judgments that were going to be poured out, in the book of Revelation. And listen, I was so excited to hear that Billy Graham was finally going to pour out from some theological position. I got the book right away, and I dug into it, and I started reading. Now, I'm telling you this to lead up to where we're going next, but what grabbed me, first of all, was that the true evangelist that he was, it took him probably 3 chapters to even get past evangelizing, because that's what he did. And so I thought maybe the whole book was going to be more of Billy Graham evangelizing. But he finally started digging into the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And what I loved about it was he just kept it simple. I think the man was a great theological mind, and he just didn't need to prove it to anybody, which I really loved. So he began to break down the 4 horsemen. He began to break down why it made sense that they were coming in the order they were coming, as Revelation described it. But then he took me in a direction that really did change my theology, changed the way I approach things. Even back then, this country and our mindset has always been, I want it now, I expect it to take place right now, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. America's been like that for a long, long time. It affects us from a cultural point of view. It affects us when we read the Bible. We were over in Kenya several times, and we've been to France. We've been to a couple other countries, and it's amazing when you really start paying attention how much a culture affects the way you process information and what's important, what comes to the front and what goes to the back. So he began to take me in a direction, take everybody in a direction that read the book, that began to lay out the possibility that those vials of wrath, they may very well have already been tipped over. And while we were anticipating waking up one day and finding the incredible, terrible wrath of God poured out upon us, that in actuality, the process was going to be much longer than we realized, and that we were going to be in the thick of end times and be so numb to it because there's so much talk about it and so much sensationalism and so many very misguided individuals who have claimed that they know the exact date that the Lord's returning, and we know about those marks upon our faith, and they are marks upon our faith. You can't blame somebody for having some skepticism about our belief system when we have individuals inside of it that don't pay attention to simple things like no man knows the day and the hour. And so they turn around and say that they know the day and the hour. So it grabbed me that Billy Graham was taking this in a direction that really expanded my mindset with regard to the way that God pours out. I don't know about you. I'm used to reading the Old Testament accounts, and I'm used to Korah's rebellion and the earth opening up and swallowing up those that rebelled. I'm used to Elijah's challenge and the fire coming down, and we get this mindset of God acting instantaneously, and he even did that with Ananias and Sapphira. But our God is a God of grace. Our God is a God of patience. And he doesn't always necessarily act in this immediate mode that we expect. Same thing is true when we pray and we're seeking answers from him. Sometimes the answer's on its way, and sometimes the answer can't come as soon as we'd like it to come, and only God knows why. So that grabbed me. And Steve, I'm gonna throw over to you in just a moment here. I want to check the message board, but where all of this is taking us is simply this. Billy Graham didn't stay focused on end-time events. He didn't stay there. He moved on with other essentials, things that he could really do something about. But we do have some events that have taken place recently that I believe are worth mentioning, and I'm referring to the decision to move the capital. To move the embassy into Jerusalem and recognize it as the capital of Jerusalem. Then it's in Tel Aviv right now, and the United States has made the decision. This administration has made the decision to go ahead and move the embassy there, and really taking a bold stand. I don't know. I know I'm hitting you a little bit by surprise, but do you have any initial thoughts of your own on that, Steve?
Well, the only thought before I get into that, I do truly appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this. I'm really enjoying it and really excited about what the Lord's going to do with this. But as far as what you're talking about with moving the embassy, we know that that's a fulfillment of prophecy. And it's funny how it isn't funny how they did it. I know it was well planned. The date that they picked, doesn't that also signify an anniversary of a very important date when they became, came back to being a nation? But the only problem, and it's not a problem, but the only thing that comes from that is we know there's going to be a lot of breakout of violence. There's going to be a lot of people that are not happy with it. We know who that might be and who that is. But, that's the only repercussion of that. But we know that it is a good thing.
Yeah. You mentioned the date and the numbers, and I always say this respectfully. I say God is a numbers man. He is so much connected with us and communicating with us through numbers and the symbols that are connected to him. 40 being the number of testing, and 40 days, 40 nights rain. Moses. 40 days, the 40 years in the wilderness with Israel. And when we talk about numbers, there's other numbers like, the number 3, the number 7. We know the significance of many of these numbers, 7 being the perfection, the completion of God. And of course, we know that dreaded 666 number. And I thought if and we're not going political, by the way, but if President Trump had been 60 years old, 6 months and 6 days on his first day in office, what do you think the spin would have been with all the naysayers and people who were looking for sensationalism?
Oh my gosh, I think that would have just went crazy. They would have been all over that. They
would. Yet hardly a peep is mentioned about the fact that he was 70 years, 7 days, or 7 months and 7 days old on his first full day in office. I don't know that that's actually tying into the prophecies of Daniel 9, but I don't put that out there. But I do believe this. I believe God's a numbers man, and I believe that he knows what he's doing, even right down to the very moment that something takes place. If he didn't, he wouldn't be God. But I just thought that it was hilarious. In my mind, I thought, if the Lord has a sense of humor, and I believe he does, he might be looking at that and saying, what a great time to bring this next Cyrus-type example or type into the play and watch it unfold. Well, let him come on into office because he's going to be 77, 70 years, 7 months, and 7 years old his first day in office, and that might just catch somebody's attention. Hey, it caught my attention. It had to catch some other people's attention as well. But now that you also talked about the trouble that's going to probably come as a result of this happening, when they first announced the move, the White House was saying maybe sometime in May we'll do something. Pence said, Vice President Pence said, certainly by the time 2019 gets here, and Israel was given an exact date. And so I actually paid attention to Israel on the matter because they're not going to say something like that to bring the heat on themselves unless it's something they know is going to come to pass. So I found it interesting that Israel went ahead and threw their hat over the fence on it. You mentioned how the timing of this lines up prophetically, and one thing that's really great is when you look at the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 9, and you start counting the numbers, the timing on the prophecy is incredible. I mean, they had it, he had that, inspired by the Lord, he had that down to the very day that Jesus entered his ministry with regard to the countdown. And if you take 70 AD, you subtract that from 2018 AD, that gives you 1948, which is exactly, of course, we know that, the year that Israel was officially recognized as a nation. So it appears that this thing is in motion. I know that there are folks who are much more into end-time matters and would expand and expound more upon all of the all of the numbers and the significance of it. But I don't know what's more significant than this. We are moving toward a place and a time where the world that opposes Israel, and that portion of the world that looks at the United States as the great Satan and looks as Israel as the little Satan, kind of like a Dr. Evil and Mini-Me. If you haven't seen the movie, that won't make any sense to you at all. But this is a move that is going to, as you said, it's going to incite some people, and we do know who they are for the best part. It's going to incite individuals, and we need to continue to pray for Israel. I hear people quote the passage that says, "Pray for the peace of Israel," and I wonder if we realize what we're saying when we quote that passage and what that passage is actually saying. Do you know when true peace really comes to Israel? True peace comes to Israel. Go ahead.
No, go on.
But go ahead. It was kind of rhetorical, but you're going ahead and responding, and you're welcome to.
I believe true peace is going to come to Israel when we see that eastern sky part. I think prior to that, all we're going to see is chaos and havoc and a lot of discord amongst people.
And that's my point exactly. I think we have to know what it is that we're praying for. We're basically saying, Lord, let the culmination of the ages take place. Let the things that are needful to take place, which includes persecution and very difficult times upon believers, let that all take place so that we can arrive at that place where you sit on the throne in Israel and this whole mess is almost over. I say almost because we know what happens after 1,000 years, which is something which is another part of this that just blows me away. We might have discussion on that one of these evenings. The fact that after 1,000-year reign with Christ on earth and we reigning with him, that there are still individuals who have the notion that they can join together in any type of an army and overcome. I mean, history should bear out at that point what happened at the Battle of Armageddon, but there'll actually be one more resurgence. So we're going to see that peace come to Israel. We're going to see the reign of Christ for 1,000 years. But even during that period of time, there's going to be people who are resisting, rebelling, and don't like the idea of being under the rule of the Messiah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to rule with an iron fist. He wouldn't have to rule with that iron hand during that time. But I'm getting way ahead of us. I think it's significant that this embassy is being moved. I believe that it's significant that you quoted the passage the other night about for such a time as this. And while I'm neither Republican or Democrat, I don't care too much for political debate these days. I do believe that God is still in control, and He puts people in places of authority. All you have to do is read the first part of the book of Romans, and you'll understand. He puts authority in place. He removes, and we know the word says He removes kings and installs kings because He has a master plan, and it's beyond anything that we can imagine. So, any thoughts on your own? Any thoughts that anybody has with regard to that? Anything that anybody wants to chime in? This would be a really great time to do it before we move on to another topic. I'll remind you that the text line is 570-220-2536. That's 570-220-2536. You can email at highwaymag101@gmail.com. Or again, you can just come on into the conference line. And Steve, why don't you give out the conference line number and the code to get in?
Okay, that number is 641-715-0689. The access code is 863397, and then the pound sign. Again, that number is 641-715-0689 with an access code of 863397, pound sign.
Thank you. Just sending out a quick little note to everybody. And there we go. So we've talked about this a little bit. This prophecy from Daniel 9:24 that we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it all, but the prophecy that the Messiah will be raised up. He'll come back. He'll come into His own in Jerusalem and sit on that throne. But there's a couple of things inside of that prophecy that needed to take place. One of them was the death and the resurrection of Jesus. The other is that 7-year covenant that's to be made, that false peace that's going to be made, a brokered peace. And kind of back on the backside of all of this news about moving the embassy into Jerusalem is the announcement that the administration is going to be unveiling their peace plan, like every president has up to this time. They've said already nobody's going to love it, but they think both sides can live with it. It's always easy to say what somebody else can live with. But, that if a peace agreement like that comes out and is accepted, that's another one of those things that needs to take place. A 7-year covenant needs to come to pass. So some type of a false peace has to be brokered, something that makes everybody feel like their needs are being met and respected. And there's one other subtopic inside of that has to take place. Now, some people have a different theological bent, and that's okay. But I believe that the temple needs to be rebuilt. I believe that there needs to be a third temple. Otherwise, you can't have sacrifices. Otherwise, the sacrifices can't be stopped halfway through the 3.5-year period of time. And again, I know that there are those who don't see the whole eschatological line the way that I might. But from my perspective, I believe that temple is going to be built. And I also believe from the things that I've studied and learned over time that it's going to go up overnight. That's hyperbole. I don't believe it's going to literally go up overnight, but it's going to go up very, very fast. artisans from all over the world have been crafting the pieces in their particular realms of artistry and expertise. And those items are going to flood into Israel. I believe they already sit. They're already waiting. And I believe some of those things already exist inside of Israel. We're going to see that temple go up very, very quickly when the path is finally opened up. So there's a lot more connected to this than just an embassy going into Jerusalem and coming out of Tel Aviv. I believe that's going to prove to be, in my opinion, I believe it's going to prove to be, I believe it's going to prove to be that thing we've all been waiting and longing for, and we'll see how it moves along.
You know, Wyatt, when I listen to all this, we as Christians, we get excited about this. These are things that we have read about. These are things that we have been told about. And we get excited, as we're looking to seeing all these different things coming to pass and being fulfilled. But, doesn't it give us not a fear, but an urgency for evangelizing? Reaching out to those that are lost. There's so many that are possibly listening and don't have the slightest idea what we're talking about. And to know that there are so many of them, that will be following that wide and broad gate to destruction, seeing all this stuff coming to pass like that. I think it really should, as Christians, it should really grab a hold of us and give us an urgency to go out and do what the Lord has called us to do, and that's go into the highway and the hedges and share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
It is. And we touched on this Friday night a little bit. Not everybody can stand up on the proverbial soapbox on the street corner, as they say. Not everybody stands up in front of the church and preaches. Not everybody teaches a Sunday school class. We need individuals to do whatever they've been gifted to do. Paul makes it very clear. You start reading 1 Corinthians 12 and 14 and some in between there with 13, and you understand the gifts that God has poured out, and you go to Romans, same thing. You understand the gifts that God has poured out are diverse. They go out for everybody to have something to bring to the table, as it were, something to offer. And we need to equip the people that are going out on the highways and byways. We need to equip people who are ministering in obscure ministry, where my heart really is leaning toward that. And I want to talk a little bit about that before we run out of time. The road trip that's coming up for me, that I believe is going to come up for me. At this point, it looks like we might be able to head out through Ohio, go through Illinois, and on through into Indiana, and get out there all the way to the Road Angel. Not sure if we make it all the way out to Kansas or not, but and then we may even turn south a little bit and head down toward Kentucky way. We none of those things are in stone yet, but some really great opportunities for us to highlight some ministries that are reaching out and don't get much attention. But I agree with you. There should be a sense of urgency, Steve, not panic, right? We're not talking about a sense of panic. We're talking about a sense of urgency. I think it's the difference between getting up and calmly walking to the exit when the fire alarm goes off, as opposed to running like crazy and trampling everybody over. We're not looking to panic here or to create panic. I remember several years ago now, what was his name, camping out there in the San Francisco area. He had his entire congregation in a panic mode, in my opinion. He had them so fooled into thinking that Jesus was coming back on a certain date that people sold their houses, they sold their cars, they cashed in their 401. I mean, they cashed it all in, and they gave that money to the church, which really made my head scratch, because who was going to be left behind to care about it at the church anyway? But he had his whole congregation of people all over the place, just cashing in and checking out and getting ready for Jesus to come back. And what a mess that created. I can't even imagine. That would be a great story to follow up on and see where those people are now 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever it was, 3 years later, and see how their lives, how they've recovered. They quit their jobs. It was just insane what they went through. So we have to be wise. I think we have to really, really be wise in what we do and how we go about it. But somebody's telling me that March 9th is Danny Smith's birthday, storyteller. And somebody else is saying that they believe Wednesday is Wyatt's birthday. And, yeah, thanks, Bruce. He thinks I'm going to be old. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm not there yet. But no, that birthday thing on me, you must be looking at, that birthday on me is not right. You got to wait until all the way into the day before Christmas to get to my birthday. So I've already had mine, or I have one coming up again, whichever way you want to look at it. But, yeah, we have to remember Danny. March 9th is Danny Smith's birthday. That's great to know. Thank you. Happy birthday to you, Danny, because I know you signed on there, too. And he even learned to type in. I'm really impressed. Scott says we're all aging like fine wine. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hopefully that's true. So, hey, listen, I want to lighten things up a little bit. There was something that came through the other day. Now, if you are not a carnivore, I really don't want you to be offended. But I'm a carnivore, and I like my steaks, I like my hamburgers, I like my hot dogs, even if I don't know what's in them, and don't want to know what's in them. But I'm a carnivore, and I came across an article that I thought might be fun to kick around a little bit, because we only have so much time in a 1-hour format. But have you ever heard of something called clean meat? Or plant-based meat? Two different things there. I call it fake meat, but yeah, the clean meat, that one really scares me. And no, clean meat does not mean as long as you pick it up off the ground within 3 seconds, it's still okay. I'm not talking about that. They have a term for something called clean meat, and it turns out that folks are making some fairly convincing meat substitutes these days, and those fine folks that don't want us to eat animals are all for this. By the way, that eating animals is something that we've done since death was introduced into the world, and I might add, received the original USDA stamp of approval from the Lord himself. That would be unilaterally spoken divine authority, USDA. From Genesis 9, where he said, everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you the everything. You must not eat meat that has the life still in it, which I guess means we can't walk out into the field and stick a fork in a cow. But we've been given license to eat these things, and I am so glad for that. I guess I wouldn't know what I was missing if I never had consumed any meat. But I want to ask anybody to comment right now. Do you have any idea? It's not exactly meat, but do you have any idea what that stuff is that's in the Chinese seafood surprise at the China? Does anybody have an idea? I think I do want to know, because I don't eat it. All I know is that it kind of looks like lobster. It ain't lobster. And sometimes it kind of looks like shrimp, but it's not shrimp. So I'm just curious if anybody actually knows. Maybe we have a culinary expert out there, someone who can tell me. Do you have any idea what it is that's in that? So back to the real issue here. It turns out that there are no rules presently concerning how that stuff gets labeled, and the people who are creating this clean meat, I can't believe they've got me calling it meat. It's not meat, but they're pushing to keep the government from making them put a label on it to say that it's not real meat. Just as the beef and the poultry producers have their spokespeople, These folks, the fake meat people, have their own. There's a quote that I came across from a Jessica Almy, and she's the policy director at the Good Foods Institute. She says, I think that clean meat and plant-based meat will make up, what did she say? I think she said it will make up the majority of meat purchases by 2050. Well, that in itself makes me feel a little better. I hope I'm still around to 2050, but then I would be old. Then I really would be old, Scott, or Bruce. But they're saying that there's going to be a gradual, steady increase of this fake meat. Well, they're not calling it fake. And they say that I think clean meat and plant-based meat will make up a majority of meat purchases by 2050. And this is just the beginning of a very big trend in the food industry. And then this part bothers me. I think it's going to be the default meat that you get if you don't think about anything else. What people say sometimes, I don't know if they're really right. Like, yeah, if you don't think about it, if it's not on the label to remind you that it's not real meat, I guess it could become your default meat, especially if, I don't know, especially if you don't really love your steaks and you're willing to take whatever they pass down the line to you. But it bothers me that in a world where Congress and the Senate and all of them can get involved. Remember years ago, they had to make a lickety-split decision on how to deal with the runaway use of steroids in professional baseball. And they spent their time doing that rather than dealing with things that really needed to be dealt with. And then something like this comes along, and the meat industry is fighting tooth and nail to try to get them to label it, just to show people and differentiate between what's real and what's not. So I just wonder if anybody has any thoughts about that. If anybody is a true carnivore like I am, I think you might have a thought to say about this. I'm really worried that if Congress gets involved in it on the wrong end of it, that the word police might come in and start hijacking even the words that we use. Maybe even something as simple as a joke. Instead of why does the chicken cross the road joke, it'll be why did the tofu cross the road? And the answer will be to prove he wasn't a chicken. And we're going to have to deal with some of those things if they don't put proper labeling on it. Listen, as carnivores, we get up every day. We do our part to keep the world economy turning. We consume massive quantities of bacon and sausage and egg and cheese biscuits and my favorite, steak and eggs. And you want to see the stock markets take a crash, you just take away America's beef and replace it with laboratory-grown meat and vegetable-based meat. Again, I can't believe they've actually got me calling it meat, but I guess that's how something starts. There's a group of people that say we're cruel and barbaric humans because we eat animals. And they're troubled at the notion that we would do this because they say that animals are people too. If only I could help them understand that plants have feelings too, and their screams are just silent when we cut them off and put them in boiling water and grind them up in our teeth. Plants have feelings too. There's life in them as well. And vegans get a bit carried away with the whole animals are people too thing, but they're loving this whole laboratory produced fake meat idea. When they say animals are people too, kind of makes us sound like a cannibal, doesn't it? We're eating other people. I understand it's necessary to allow people with opposing views to speak their mind, even when we don't agree. That's part of our constitutional right, free speech. That's the reason we're free to say things too. It makes me wonder about a couple of things. I wonder if two vegans are having an argument, is it okay to call it a beef? And I'm thinking of this whole cannibal thing, and And a couple of little things entered into my mind. I thought about the two cannibals that were at a picnic, and the one said to the other, I hate my mother-in-law. And the other cannibal said, well, all right, just eat the noodles. I'm thinking about the two cannibals that are on a beach eating a clown, and one of the cannibals asked the other, does this clown taste funny to you? I just think that we almost have to laugh at this whole thing a little bit because the people who want us to get to the point where we don't eat animals I don't know. Do they really forget how good they taste? Would you miss your steak if you couldn't get it? Would you miss a hamburger if you couldn't get it? And even though we don't know what's in a hot dog, would you miss a hot dog if it was laboratory produced and it just wasn't the same anymore? All right. Hi to you, Reverend Jimmy. I'm glad to see that you're watching. Yeah. And to your new friend, driver, Doug. That's great. Good to see you. Tastes like chicken. Laugh out loud. Okay, Scott. I love it. I love it. So, you get to eat a lot of things out on the road yourself because you're out on the road all week, right?
Yes, I do. But I watch what I eat. This whole thing with this fake meat and fake food, I find it alarming. I'm still trying to wrap my head around boneless ham. I picture all these little pigs trying to get across the floor and none of them got legs, and we know that these people, they get all upset and they, how you talk about different things, such as what we're talking about, but then you got a group of people sitting in a forest screaming and asking the trees for their forgiveness for chopping them down and them dying. I find it alarming, Wyatt. I mean, you look at all the food that we eat, and you look at all the sicknesses, and we know that, a lot of this is from sin, but you look at all this stuff, how do you get chicken McNuggets? You know what I'm saying? It's just everything compressed.
Go to the drive-up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then you order what you want, you eat what you get, because that usually isn't right neither. Right. But even with the vegans and the vegetarians, I mean, there's so many chemicals that are being sprayed on all these products and that, and slowing down the growth period of bananas and apples and things of that nature. It's funny, you can go in the store, buy a big bunch of bananas, they're as green as a Christmas tree, but, a couple hours sitting in your truck, they're as yellow as can be. It's all pretty alarming to me.
Wow. Yeah. Hey, a wonderful friend of ours, Brandy, she's a driver. She sent me something called a banana bag. And you can throw those bananas in it, and it just keeps them for days and days. It keeps them really nice. I don't quite understand it, but it works, and pretty cool. But yeah, I remember as a kid, I was raised out on the West Coast for a good part of my life. And as a kid, we would go through the strawberry fields, and we'd grab ourselves a strawberry when nobody was looking. And, they were huge, wonderful, sweet, succulent strawberries, excellent strawberries. You get some of those huge, giant strawberries. You can find them sometimes, I don't know, in a Sam's Club or something like that. They're ginormous. They're really big. And the first time I ever saw them, I bought some because I thought, oh boy, going to take me back home. And I bit into this thing, and the texture, it wasn't right. Something was absolutely wrong with this thing. Genetically modified, hastened along, on top of that in greenhouses and the things that they're doing with foods, it's scary, and I wish they could just leave it alone. Now, you mentioned the pig, and I have to tell you, I think this is my favorite joke to tell when I'm in a room full of vegetarians and vegans, especially if they've been somewhat militant. I try to get somebody's attention, and then I tell the story about the insurance agent who stood in a barnyard with a farmer, and he was looking around, and he noticed this three-legged pig that was over there in the pen, and he said, "Hey, what's with that three-legged pig?" And the farmer said, "Oh, hey, that's a fantastic pig, let me tell you. When I was backing up the combine, Martha was behind it. She fainted, and I was going to run over her. I didn't know she was there. But at the last minute, don't you know, that pig came over, grabbed her by the collar, and drug her out of the way. It's one incredible pig. And the insurance agent said, wow, that's pretty cool, but what about the 3 legs? Let me tell you about that pig. That pig is incredible. You know, we had a fire, and we were all sleeping. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and don't you know, that pig ran up on the porch, got up on its back feet, and started pounding and pounding away with its front hoofs, and just it woke us up. You know what? We didn't even have to call the fire department. That pig woke us up that quick. He saved the entire house and probably our lives. When the insurance agent said, okay, that's great, you've got a great pig there, but what's the deal with the 3 legs? And the farmer looked at him and said, you know, when you have a pig that's that good, you don't eat him all at once. That's just one of my favorite silly jokes. I think Danny will like that one, too. That's for you, Danny. So I just wanted to bring something to lighten things up a little bit. We have maybe, 12 minutes or so left, and I'm looking to see if we have anybody sending a question in this video. It's your Google profile. He's telling me my Google profile says my birthday is February 29th. So, howdy to everybody that's checking, and I'm just delighted with everybody that's checking into the Facebook Live program. Listen, is there anybody on your end there, Bruce, that might have something they want to comment, a topic that they want to tackle, something that they'd like to, this would be an excellent time. Let's invite them to do that. And if not, we can move to talking about this next Highways and Byways Live. I would really, really like, and here what Danny's story says, well, what about engineered corn and soybeans? Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about that, Danny. We were just talking about genetically modified food and even the nutrition that is lacking in it. And I'm not a farmer, but it seems to me that if an organic or just a regular farmer who's not using hybrid type stuff, if his farm, which could have been there for a long, long time, if the products that are coming from his farm affect negatively the hybrid stuff that's being grown in another field, I believe there's been some court cases where the farmer that's growing organically and naturally actually winds up being liable for destroying things over on the other side, the other field. I have to look that up again. I remember a story about that, and it seemed so out of kilter. It seemed so unfair itself. And so anyway, we have just a few minutes left before we're going to sign off, but coming up onto the next Highways and Byways, I'd really like you to text into that text line, or you can send a question in over the Facebook page on Highways and Byways. You can do that. If you're online right now, you know how to do that. But you can also text 570-220-2536. That's 570-220-2536. Or email in at highwaymag101@gmail.com. highwaymag101@gmail.com. And get some questions or some topical ideas that you'd like to tackle, something that you'd like to bring some thoughts to the table yourself, because I don't have to talk for an hour, and Bruce doesn't have to fill in for 20 minutes. Or, you can drive the direction we're going to go with this every Monday when we fire up and go live. And if you can send in your questions, your comments, or a topic there where you'd like to go, we can take off that way. And if you want to get involved in the discussion, you'll need to call into the conference line to do that. And we'll have that conference line number up there, all the contact information. We'll keep posting it up all week so it stays at the top of our page as much as possible. So I want to encourage you to do that in the weeks coming up here, and particularly next week. Take the time, try to think about one of those tough Bible questions or passages that you've come across that you've always wanted to dig in a little deeper to. Maybe a topic that we're missing, because in all honesty, there's a whole lot more important things than laboratory-produced food. It just, the whole thing was a little humorous to me, and I wanted to go there for a little bit. And humor's okay too. So if you have a fun story, a funny story, if you have a testimony, a short testimony, something you can bring to us, maybe a brief testimony about the goodness of the Lord. That's what this forum is for. It's really to take things off of the page of Facebook a little bit and out from the conference line a little bit and get some more interaction going across the platforms. Just remember this, if you're watching on Facebook, you're about a 20-second delay. I'm going to wave right now. And I believe that that's not going to come across to you viewing for maybe 20 seconds or so if our initial tests were right. So if you're watching on Facebook and you call in to talk on the conference line, just remember there's going to be a considerable delay between how you see me respond and what's actually going on in the conference line. So that's important. Bruce Phelps says, highwaynag101 at gmail.com. Maybe I missed it or something like that. Yeah. Love your brother. Danny Storyteller. Love your brother. What if he's a donkey? Being polite. Great subject. We could go out on that one, couldn't we, Steve?
Oh, we sure could. There's no doubt about it.
What do you do if your brother is a donkey? If your brother's acting the fool, I'm going to just fire a short salvo out first, and I'm going to say that the way I deal with that now is a whole lot different than the way I dealt with it when I was younger, because I've lived long enough now to realize that I have been the donkey a number of times in my life. And so my first reaction after I get past the flesh, my first reaction is to try to respond some way that brings life to the situation, extend some grace, and try to do it in such a way where it doesn't make the individual think that it's okay to continue to do what they're doing, because most of the time it turns out to be some kind of ignorant behavior. And by the way, jackass isn't a curse word, and I'm comfortable with it. So, if somebody's being a jackass, and I've played that part myself, as I've said a number of times, I try to extend grace. I try to make that my first reaction. I guess a lot of it depends on whether it's affecting a number of other people negatively at the time or not. Steve, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we all get in a situation from time to time where we don't say what is quite right, or we act in a way, and most of the time after we reflect upon it, we're sitting there going, wow, why did I do that? And people are looking at you like, wow, does he do that all the time? But like you said, with grace, we kind of, you got to kind of overlook some stuff and you walk past it. One thing for sure, no matter who you look at, you can find something wrong with them. You can find where they have slipped up, fallen down, but you got to take that time to look and find the good in them. Sometimes that's not easy to do.
Yes. Reverend Jimmy Stanbury, Chaplain Jimmy over at the Milton Truck Stop, has said, remember that God used a donkey to speak, and that he did. I think that was that Balaam that he was speaking to.
Yes.
Yeah, he used a donkey to speak to Balaam. Danny Storyteller says, but the rest of them were dumb. God used a donkey to speak to them, but Danny Storyteller says the rest of them were dumb. Well, I fortunately haven't had to deal with donkeys too much in my life. Real animals, and I've never eaten one. As much as I love being a carnivore, I've never eaten a donkey. I'm not saying that I wouldn't. and one more note on that whole vegan thing. I just can't help it. They can be that way if they want to, and God bless them. I think it's great because it leaves the choicer cuts of filet mignon for me. I'm great with people being vegetarians and vegans. And listen, we eat a whole lot of salad and vegetables in this house, and we try to eat as organically as possible. We also enjoy our meats. But one of the things that the vegans and the vegetarians say about carnivores, about people who eat meat, besides the fact that we're killing other people, is the fact that we don't make wise choices in the way we eat. And I'm not sure that I agree with that. We make really wise choices. We try really hard to do that. It's my understanding that grain-fed animals are the tastiest of all. So if it ever does come down to cannibalism, I'm going to make a wise choice, and I'm going to pick out a vegan.
Well, you're going to get in trouble with that one, Wyatt.
It's all for fun. If you ever heard the jokes that they have about us, it's all for fun, and it really is. I have fun with it, and I can poke fun at myself too, just as easily. So, but yeah, I that was just that one last little thing I kind of like to throw in there, have a little bit of fun with it all. I think we're going to. I think we're going to stay true to our word here, and probably Danny Storyteller Smith says, "Whoa!" I don't know what that's "whoa" to. I don't advocate cannibalism. Do I have to put those disclaimers out there, Steve? Do I really have to do that?
Well, actually, I don't think so, Wyatt, because we're all supposed to be Christians on this line, and we got to show the love of Jesus, right?
Well, yeah, and if I'm being a jackass right now, it's a great time to treat me with a little bit of grace, right?
There you go.
Well, I think we brought things full circle. I wanted to get to, we're not going to do it, we're going to stay true to our word here. I wanted to get to another little topic, and that was getting into a little bit of an evolution versus creation conversation. I wanted to go after some of the more recent findings that have popped up, and just talk a little bit about why they are not so profound and why they don't really establish anything more about evolution than before they came up with these new findings. There's the constant flow of this, and people think that this whole evolution, and in general, people think that this whole evolution versus creation thing is no longer a debate. It's kind of like Al Gore saying that the debate is over with regard to global warming, and no, it isn't. It's not over by a long shot. But just because somebody says it's over, it doesn't mean it's over. This whole debate with the evolution and creation has to be kept alive, because your children or your grandbabies are going to school and they're still having to take tests that they have to say the earth is 10 billion years old and that dinosaurs roamed the earth before man, and all of that litany of things that they have to spout out. Now, our sons and daughters all know the Lord, and they all handle this the same way that we raised them. We told them, give the answers that you have to give on the tests, but you know what your true belief system is. You're not in God's classroom there. You're in the world's classroom. Pass the test, get your grade. You know what the real truth is. And we raised our children that way, and they've passed that on to our grandchildren. So next time around, I'd really like to get into that a little bit. One more chance. Any final thoughts for anybody on the conference line? Steve, any final thoughts from you?
Well, the only thing I have to say is I really enjoyed tonight. I thought tonight went really good, and I'm looking forward to next Monday when we can do it again.
Amen. One more. Let's see. Danny sent in James 3:3. There it says, if we put bits into the mouth of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. That goes on. The tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a force to set ablaze by such a small fire. Well, I'll tell you what, now he's got me scared. All right, we're going to call it a night. I've got a note that the video screen is frozen for Bruce. If anybody else encountered that, I'd sure love you sending a note and letting me know. It looks like it's going well here. He says the audio's still coming through. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll try to see what kind of messages you send in throughout this coming week, so that coming into next Monday we can take the scene in the direction you'd like it to go. Until then, may God smile upon everything that you set your heart and hands to do, and especially the things that you set your heart and hands to do for others. Amen. God bless you all.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you later.
Okay. Good night.